Today we're looking at note C-2, tangent lines, day 2. Show all work that leads to your answers. Okay, number 1, the figure shows a line and a circle with equations y equals x minus 2 and x squared plus y squared equals 100 respectively. Given O is the origin of the circle, and P is the point of intersection in the first quadrant, and Q is the point of intersection in the third quadrant, complete the following. Part A, determine the x coordinates, so only the x values, of the points of intersection between the line and the circle. So I want the x value for point P and the x value for point Q. I am given two equations. This is Algebra 2, solving a system of equations. Okay, given these two equations, find their intersection. So because of the basic setup of these two equations, the substitution method is easiest. I notice this equation here is already in y equals form. I can pretty easily plug in this expression, what y equals, in for y into the other equation. Okay, so again, this is called the substitution method. So we're going to substitute, make sure I spell it right, because this is a system of equations. So remember, there was the elimination method, lots of different methods, but in this case substitution seems easiest. So I'm going to write this equation as I see it, x squared plus, where I see y, I'm plugging in x minus 2 squared equals 100, and then start chugging along with the algebra. So the 2, the squared up there, means I have x minus 2 twice. Okay, so then I'm going to use the FOIL method, so keep dragging down that x squared. First, x times x is x squared. The outer and the inner, when I multiply those, are both going to produce negative 2x. So when I combine negative 2x and negative 2x, I get negative 4x. And then last, plus 4, so that was just FOIL, equals 100. A couple of things I'm going to do in one here. I'm going to move over the 100. Okay, and I'm going to combine these two x squareds because I notice I have a quadratic equation, and in order to solve a quadratic equation, I need all terms on one side of the equal sign. So 2x squared, when I combine those, drag down the minus 4x, drag down the plus 4, this becomes minus 100 equals 0. Okay, so 2x squared minus 4x, combine these two, I get negative 96 equals 0. So here's a quadratic equation that we know how to solve. Sure, you could use quadratic formula, but factoring seems and will be much easier. So remember, when you factor, GCF has to come out first. So 2 is my GCF. That leaves me with x squared minus 2x minus 48 equals 0. To factor this inside, recall there's an implied 1 here, because you must multiply that a times c for your t-chart, so numbers that multiply to negative 48 but add to negative 2. So 6 and 8 multiply to 48, and that would work if the 8 was negative. Okay, so drag down that GCF of 2, and then we would have x plus 6, x minus 8, and then equals 0. So remember, to finish this solving process, I set each factor equal to 0 and solve. Okay, so 2 equals 0, x plus 6 equals 0, and x minus 8 equals 0. This tells me nothing. 2 does not equal 0. On this one, we move the 6 to the other side. It becomes x equals negative 6, and on this one, x equals positive 8 when you move that. So I have thus found my x coordinates. So my x coordinates are negative 6 and positive 8. And it makes sense based on the graph that coordinate P would be the x value of 8, and that coordinate Q would be the x value of negative 6, because positive x, negative x. Okay, so part B, determine the coordinates of point P. So we already know the x-coordinate of point P, that would be 8. How do we find the y? Well, we have these two equations here. You could use either or but I'm going to use this one because obviously it's a lot easier. It's already in y equals. All I got to do is sub in that 8 minus 2, y equals 6, and that makes sense. We should have a positive y value because of where the location of the point is. Okay, so that was part B. Part C wants us to determine the coordinates of Q. So same process. To find that y value, go ahead and plug into this equation here. So y equals, our x value for Q is -6, so -6 minus 2. So y equals -8. So our coordinate for Q would be -6, -8. Okay. So part D, write an equation in point-slope form of the tangent line to the circle at point P. Okay, the tangent line at point P. Well, before we even start thinking about that, we've got a couple of things we need to do. Okay, we need to draw the radius from O to P. We need to draw the radius. Oh, that's not perfect, but it'll do. Let me fix it a little. Okay, so we have drawn the radius from O to P. Okay, what is the slope of that radius? To get from O to P, I go up, how much? 6, and I go right 8. So 6/8. How does that simplify? 3/4. Okay, so M for this is 3/4. That helps me with my M, my slope, for the tangent line. So I'm going to go ahead and draw the tangent line. Remember, the tangent line should be perpendicular to the radius, and it should touch the circle at 1 point. So about that. That's our tangent line. So if it's perpendicular to the radius, this from O to P has a slope of 3/4. The opposite reciprocal of 3/4 would be -4/3. So therefore we know our slope is -4/3. We know our point. Our point is point P, 8,6. So let's go ahead and plug into that point slope form. Y equals, the slope is -4/3. Okay, and then x minus 8, and then plus 6. Bet we know what E is going to ask, right? Write an equation in point slope form of the line tangent to the circle at point Q. So again, point Q up here has the point -6, -8. So we know the point -6, -8. Now we've got to find the slope. So remember, come back up here. Okay, let's first draw OQ. Draw the radius there, OQ. What is the slope of OQ? Well, the slope of OQ, you go down 8, left 6. So -8, -6. That's going to simplify to +4 over +3. 4/3. So that makes sense that both of these slopes are positive. They both are increasing from left to right. Okay, so if that's our slope of our radius, let's go ahead and draw our tangent line. Maybe about there. All right, what is the slope of our tangent line? So remember, the tangent line is perpendicular, so the opposite reciprocal of 4/3 would be -3/4. So our slope is -3/4. Let's go ahead and fill into our formula. Y equals our slope, -3/4, x minus -6, so +6, and then -8.